Hi, everyone, and welcome back for another episode of Malice in the Mitten. I am your host, Tracy Preston, along with my bestie, Christine Mulligan. Hey, Christine.
Hey, Trace. What's going on? What malice are we getting into today?
Well, we're going to dive into a pretty horrific story that is still to this day unsolved. And I hate that.
It gives us something to ponder and come up with our crazy cockamamie. We think who did it. So
yeah.
I'm into it. Let's do it.
Let's do it. Okay. All right. So today's story was written and researched by Angela Hoefler. So thank you, Angela. Here we go. Summertime. The year 1983. Drive-in movie theaters were a thing back then, and oh boy, do I miss those. Did you guys ever do that where you grew up in New York? Did they have drive-ins?
I never did it in New York, but when my kids were younger and we lived in Florida, we did it twice. I want to say there was. I think the Westbury Drive-In. I could be wrong. I don't remember. I could be making this up. I'm not sure. I think there was. I may have gone as a kid with someone once, but not that I remember. So I would say that's a big fact. No, I never drove myself to the drive-in out on Long Island. I never did that.
Oh, man, we used to do it all the time. Where I grew up in Charlotte, kind of going out of town, there was a drive-in theater there, and my mom, I would always remember, she had the big green Tupperware bowl, the big lid that went on it, and she'd always make a big thing of popcorn and stuff like that, and I always remember the dancing hot dog and the Coke and the corny music reminding you to, hit that concession stand. And what about that god-awful metal speaker that you had to manually roll down your window to hang that baby on just so you could hear the movie?
Yeah, no, I only know about that through stories. Because even when I took my kids, it was just a big speaker coming out of the grass, I think. You didn't put it on your car. So see, I missed out on that crap.
Yeah.
We had theaters.
Yeah, it was this metal archaic, speaker used to, lift off the hanger on the pole, and then you roll down your window and you put this god awful thing on there, and it's so funny because you used to think, oh, that sounded so great, but really it sounded pretty crappy. But it was good times, right? So I'm so glad I got to experience that. Uber popular movies in 1983 that drew in the crowds there were Star Wars, Return of the Jedi, and Superman 3. Remember those? Did you ever see those?
Of course I remember those. Who didn't see all those?
Christopher Reeve.
You had to watch the Superman movies.
Oh, yeah, it was a big deal. Well, as a teenager, you would spend hours talking on the phone back then, right? Stretching that curly cord all the way down the hall or up the stairs for some privacy. We've talked about that on Round Robin before, I'm pretty sure. Listening to music back in the day were via 8 tracks and cassette tapes or the radio. Boom boxes and Walkmans were the thing. In fact, I even had an 8-track player in my car. Did you?
I didn't have one in my car, but my mother had one, yes. I didn't have a car until 1990, I think, is when I got my first car.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I definitely had one of those babies in my car, and those 8-tracks were huge.
Yes, they were huge. I do remember them being in there, and I do remember as a kid having it in my mom's car, because we weren't safe back then. We were allowed to drive in the front seat, and we were allowed to do all those things, no seat belts and all that.
Yeah.
So I do remember jumping in the back to get an 8-track and then jumping over the seat, while she's driving.
Of course.
To put it in, I remember that. That was my job.
Yeah, we climbed all over that damn car like monkeys without any restraints.
Yep.
Crazy times. I can't believe we even survived that shit. For fun, teens of the 80s would hang out at the drive-in, drive through a cornfield to party up at a Keller-filled party, go shopping at the mall, and cruise around town with friends while blasting that 8-track or cassette. And why is it that all I can see in my mind is Fast Times at Ridgemount High?
That's just the movie, so apparently you were a stoner teenager?
I'm not going to confess to any of that. I went to one party. I mean, my dad was quite strict, but I did go to one party in a cornfield, and it was the craziest party I've ever seen in my life. Craziest party I've ever. You're driving, you're like, where is this damn party? And all of a sudden you see tire tracks driving through a cornfield. I'm like, oh, this must be it. We turned down through the cornfield, and then it opened up to this insane party where there were like train cars. And in the one train car, it was open, and that's where they were serving, the kegger. And then there was a huge mud pit, and there was like crazy, crazy mud bogging going on. It was like you just walked into this party world. It was the craziest thing I've ever seen. I did that once.
Yes, I never had that experience. I never did the cornfield parties as a kid. I'm sure out on the island again, there were cornfields, because I remember we would go pumpkin picking. You drive out to the island in the fall and go pumpkin picking. So there were farms out there. There probably still are. I don't know. Naive. But I never did that. But we had beach parties. We used to all drive, go down to, well, we didn't drive down to the beach. We'd get down to the beach. We'd either walk or, if you were in another county or town, you'd come and take the train or something, and we'd go to the beach and sometimes have a bonfire, but usually not, because if you did, it was a short party because the cops were coming to get you.
They're like, no fires, children.
No cornfield parties, but beach parties as a kid. And they were never that crazy, though. I mean, I guess they were, but never anything like what I hear cornfield parties were like.
Yeah, well, let me tell you, I don't know who threw this party. I don't even remember how I heard of it, but these teenagers that threw this party were freaking pros. That's all I'm going to say. It could have been on a movie.
They were actually adults making some coin off of kids.
Yeah, no shit. All right, enough memory lane. All right, so the place where today's story took place is Vicksburg, Michigan. It's a small agricultural community, a village, and your favorite place, Kalamazoo County.
I'd like me some Kalamazoo.
I know you do. Now,
really, just with the name?
I know. Now, Kalamazoo County is near the bottom west end of Michigan, and the Cross family lived here, and for them, Vicksburg provided a nice, quiet country life, a safe place for them to raise Erik and his younger sister, Jackie. It was Saturday, June 25th, 1983. Erik Cross was 16 years old. He had an evening planned which was filled with hanging out with his friends at a party, and Jackie, Erik's younger sister, recounts in an interview with Crime Watch Daily, quote, "He was preparing to leave the house and was styling his hair in the mirror. He had a distinctive 80s hairstyle, and the song The Look of Love was playing on the radio. This night in June would be the last time Jackie would see her brother alive. Jackie said, quote, "This moment is indelibly etched in my memory as I said goodbye to him." Erik's last evening began at a lake house where one of his friends hosted a drinking party. Rich Madison, Erik's friend, said about the party that it was a kegger. For a $2 admission fee, the teenage guests were provided with unlimited beer, despite many being underage, including 16-year-old Erik. Jackie, Erik's sister, said, quote, "My parents didn't even know that he went to this party." However, Erik's friends were attending, and there would be a lot of attractive girls present in addition to the inexpensive beer, which police report Erik consumed for hours. Machus, a police officer, said, quote, "We know he was highly intoxicated when he left the party. Erik was observed leaving the party around 1 a.m., stumbling down the road toward his home, located less than 1 mile from the party venue. A witness informed police that Erik was seen walking past the gas station just several hundred yards from his home at approximately 1:30 in the morning on June 26th. There were 2 cars seen, one yellow and one that was a dark color, that was reported parked nearby. Madison believes, quote,
I think he made it home. Whatever transpired took place after he arrived at his house.
Erik's father reported hearing the front door rattling in the early morning hours and assumed his son was entering the house. However, authorities state that the front door was locked, and it is believed that Erik likely returned to the front yard thereafter, but what transpired following this has remained unknown for years. Erik's parents said that it was around 5 a.m. the following morning after Erik went out when they said they heard a car with a loud muffler turning around in their driveway. It was approximately 5:30 in the morning when Mr. Cross came outside to grab the newspaper, but it wasn't the paper that caught his eye. It was his son's shoe in the middle of the road. His eyes went from his son's shoe in the middle of the road to his son's body lying on the side of the road. He immediately doubled back inside the house to get his wife, Marilou. It was later in an interview when she was asked about that moment in time, quote,
I was in shock. I ran back to the house and got a blanket to cover him up with. And I called a neighbor who worked at the hospital, and I wanted him to give CPR. And he tried, but he said it was of no use.
The moment Jackie looked at her mother, her face said it all. She knew her brother was dead. One of the first officers that arrived on scene was Officer Machen. At the time, he was a young green patrolman, and he recalls finding evidence at the scene strewn for hundreds of yards down the road. He said, quote,
there was plastic from a car, shoes. Little more than 600 feet down, there was trace evidence of the blue jean material, shirt material, blood, and what was determined to be body tissue.
At first, the police said it was just a basic, simple hit and run, but the Cross family knew that that was not the case, especially after what they had seen on Erik's body, and they did not let up on the pressure to keep the police investigating into what had really happened to their son. The more he listened to Erik's family and the more they looked, Officer Machen said, quote,
and then it started looking like there was something more involved, much more than just a car pedestrian accident.
Police believed a group of teenagers in one of those cars parked at the gas station were watching Erik and that they were the ones who murdered him. Quote,
at that point, he was likely grabbed by this group. One theory was that they had taken Erik hood surfing. That is, he had been tied to the roof of the car while it swerved sharply down the road, and that he had fallen off and was run over. Hood surfing did come up in the investigation, only because back in 1983, it was something that kids did. As we investigated a little bit further, it was determined that this was no accident. This was a deliberate act, hence murder. A particularly brutal murder. It was a very painful and torturous death that he suffered. There were contusions, deep abrasions. He had rope burns. There were visible twists or striations on his skin. He had leg fractures. He had a large gaping laceration in the middle of his lower back, in conjunction with the deep abrasions that he had.
It was believed that he had been tied up and dragged behind the car. He was run over at that point. Erik was dumped by the side of the road to make it look like it was a hit-and-run traffic fatality. He went on to say, quote,
when people cannot find the murderer, townsfolk start whispering amongst themselves and pointing fingers at those suspected in his death. The rumors started coming in. The stories started coming in from the street. It became urban legend, being passed on from person to person. We have a lot of information, but we're always a little short of putting it all together enough that we could take it to prosecution.
With Vicksburg being such a small town, things like this just didn't happen. Famous last words, right? And I'm always telling my daughter, listen, no town is safe. Anything, anytime can happen. This whole not my own town thing bullshit, it's an illusion. Officer Matches said, quote,
"We had all kinds of rumored information. Some of it was helpful, but most of it was a waste of police time. We could get phone call after phone call of another theory of what had happened, and we would ask those people, well, where did you hear this from? And we would have to keep tracking back and would come back to the rumor mill. However, there was one theme that was consistent, and that was that a car full of teenagers had dragged Erik by a rope along the road for hundreds of yards. They had run him over and dumped his body in the street near Erik's home to be discovered by his family."
So, who was the main suspect? I mean, there was someone that was the town's bully, and his name was Brent Spalding, along with his girlfriend, Amber Thomas. Quote,
"She is a person of interest. She has a clear first-hand knowledge of what went on that particular time."
She had been in the car, or at least present and knowledgeable of the circumstances, and police believe she may have been the woman neighbors had heard yelling from the same car that Erik's parents had seen them pull in the driveway just before Erik's body was found. Quote,
"As the car full of teenagers passed him, he could tell that there were multiple people in the car, and he heard a high-pitched, possibly a female voice state, 'Oh my God, he's seen us!'"
referring to the Cross's neighbor. Amber was also at the lake house drinking party and was said to have been flirting with Erik, leading police to wonder if Brent's jealousy may have been a motive for what was to come. Quote,
"Part of our investigation disclosed that Amber and Erik Cross may have been engaging in some flirtation. This may have been a flashpoint for what did occur, according to police. At the party, it was rumored that Brent was pushing Erik around due to the flirtation between Erik and Amber.
When describing Brent, quote,
He had a temperament about him that was very threatening, and he simply made a lot of people nervous. Even as a kid, if he was to make a threat, you would get this feeling that, yeah, he was going to follow through on that threat."
According to police reports, one eyewitness says he thought Brent was the devil. He called himself Lucifer and was sent to a mental institution after the death of Erik Cross. Quote,
"We know from our investigation and talking to an awful lot of people that immediately after this incident that he, meaning Brett, started acting crazy, for lack of a better word."
It was thought that perhaps he had been pretending, trying to build a defense for when the long arm of the law was going to grab him, and may have been setting himself up for a mentally incompetent defense. After that fateful night of June 25th, Brent's car just seemed to have vanished. The rumor mill is that Brent's car ended up down in Florida with some family in a pond. Police reports state that there had been a witness who said that Brent himself had confessed to them that he indeed killed Erik. But here's the thing. The cops just had nothing concrete to prove this to be true. All of the teens that were said to be in the car that night stuck to their story that they were not involved. And they basically all just took an oath of silence about what had happened that night. And I just want to stop there and say, what? How is it that anybody, let alone a group of teenagers, can keep their frickin' mouth shut?
Yeah, that's curious because they were all probably equally guilty or at least made to feel that way. So regardless, they all had a hand in it. They were all accomplices. So they were all afraid for themselves. to not point the finger.
Yeah, I just find it amazing that nobody broke their silence. I mean, really.
Yeah, they got some steel spines, those kids.
Yeah.
Steel spines and chicken livers. You know, the sayings. If too scared to come forward for who actually did the deed or the major deeds because they had some kind of hand in it. That's crazy. Nobody has a conscience. None of them. Not a one of them.
Right. Maybe they were just so that afraid of that dude, Brent. Who knows?
That's what I mean. Either spines of steel or chicken livers.
Yep.
Or a bit of both.
Even 35 years after Erik's horrific murder, Matches feels they had enough evidence to put these kids in their crosshairs. In his gut, he feels that it is Brent Spalding that is the number one suspect. Quote,
Since the incident, Brent has had numerous substance abuse issues. He's managed to find his way in and out of the county jail.
Amber Thomas, who is now married with children, was approached by Anna Garcia of Crime Watch, and when asked to talk to her about Erik, she said, quote,
No thanks.
and shut the door. Bill Cook, Erik's best friend, who went to the party that night with Erik, was another one that police suspected. Jackie and Anna Garcia made a phone call to Bill, and after a 10-minute phone conversation with him, he agreed to meet with Anna to talk to her about that night. During the interview, Bill expressed his strong emotions regarding Erik, whom he regarded as his best friend. He maintains, as he has from the outset, that he had no involvement in Erik's death, but still feels responsible for its occurrence. Quote,
He lost his life because I left him, because I wasn't there to look out for him.
Bill explained that they became separated at the party. He recounted that the last time he saw Erik was sitting in a lawn chair and mentioned he was going swimming with a girl. Upon returning from swimming, Erik was no longer there. Bill noted that Erik already begun walking home, which led to his demise. Bill then visited his girlfriend, May Britt, who was Brent Spalding's sister, and found Brent at home. He stated that he is unaware of what transpired for the remainder of the night, as he spent the night at the Spalding residence. May Britt passed away in 2007. Due to his close association with Spalding, Bill believes he has been considered a person of interest, although he asserts his innocence. Nevertheless, many individuals in Vicksburg remain skeptical. He expressed hope that if the police can resolve the unresolved evidence in the case, the cloud of suspicion might dissipate. The police handed all the evidence they had collected to the Attorney General's office in 2019. However, the Attorney General chose not to bring charges against the suspects. Quote,
We understand that this decision is deeply disappointing for the Cross family, but there is simply insufficient evidence to criminally charge any of the remaining suspects with the death of Erik Cross. We can only imagine the decades of pain and anguish they have endured, and we regret that we are unable to reach a different conclusion. Despite exhaustive efforts, including re-interviewing witnesses, it is evident that the truth about the tragic circumstances leading to Erik Cross's death that night over 36 years ago may never be known.
Jackie, Erik's sister, continues to keep his case alive to this day. She started a Facebook page dedicated to solving her brother's murder. Oh God, this reminds me of the sister from the Oakland County child killers. Oh God. Quote,
They have a place to talk about it because all these whispers had gone on in the shadows or, among small groups of people. Now, all of a sudden, here's a place we can talk about this or how it's affected us or to be surprised that it still hasn't been prosecuted.
When speaking of her brother Erik, Jackie says, quote,
We were close. All we had was each other. Erik was a good-natured, outgoing kid. He loved the outdoors and being active. And when he turned 16, his mind turned to other things like hanging out with friends, chasing girls, and going to parties. If Erik just had not gone to that party, he would still be here with us today.
So, here we are, 42 years later, and Erik and his family still have not found justice for him. If just one of those teenagers at the time would just break their silence, Erik could have justice. But no, that's not where we are. Erik's brutal murder remains unsolved to this day. And I am mad as hell. This is horrible for this poor family. And you would think that someone would just finally get it out. Who was in that car? Tell what happened and fucking deal with the consequences. You murdered a 16-year-old boy. Joyriding down the street.
Okay, but listen, I listened to your whole story, and I just want to throw this out there, that I don't think, and I understand that they did this whole investigation and all of that, but then I keep in mind that it was 42 years ago. And the physics of trauma have come a long way in 42 years. Like our understanding of what physical actions cause what medical reactions in the body. I didn't hear anything in the story where they discounted the fact that it was a hit and run. Like if he was really drunk and stumbling all over the road trying to get home, and then a stranger came by with a loud muffler and hit him right before he got home, knocking his shoes off of him into the road and him into the side of the road. Like, I didn't hear that discounted.
Well, I did talk about the rope burns on his wrist. You don't get rope burns on your wrist from just getting hit by a car.
That's true. That's true. But it could be coincidental that maybe he was doing some crazy crap at the party or in the cornfield, and maybe they were, I don't know. My brain just went to the crazy stuff that Florida kids used to do, you know, rope swings and everything. I mean, I don't know. I think there's an opening for maybe there was some stuff that went down, but he was alive when he left all those other kids. Maybe he wasn't in great shape, but he might have been alive. But the simple fact that none of those kids are talking about anything that happened, that is highly sus. I just wanted to throw it out there, that there's a possibility that something else happened. But I kind of agree with you. Like, nobody's saying anything about what happened. That's sus.
And, you know, so not only did he have the rope burns on his wrists, like they were talking about twisting and striations. So I can only imagine, let's think about it. They tied his wrists up, tied him up to the car. So your body, like if you're swerving and driving, you know, left to right to left to right, that body is going to twist and turn. Listen, you're all in the car. You all went along with it. You're all guilty. You're all accessories to this kid's murder, right? So maybe that's why they just kept their mouth shut, because they're like, maybe they had a pact. Keep your mouth shut. We're all going down.
Yeah. And I don't know why, but my brain just went to a stupid thing we used to do as kids. We used to call it skitching. Did they do that up in Michigan, where you kind of would hang on to the car in some way and like ski on the road with your sneakers?
You know what, now that you described it, I know what you're talking about, but I personally didn't know anybody that did that. They could have. I think I remember seeing something like that in Back to the Future with, what's his name? Michael?
Yeah, technically he did it on a hoverboard.
Right.
But in New York, we used to do it when it snowed. You know what I mean? Because obviously you could slide on the streets.
Yeah. No, I've never done that, nor have I
maybe
seen.
on gravel roads it was possible. I don't know. It was just a thought that came to my head when you were saying about the twisting around.
Yeah. Oh, possible. I mean, definitely you're going to move and groove on that dirt road.
I mean, it was just as stupid as car surfing. Skitching was equally dumb.
Right.
But I'm just saying, like, maybe all these kids never said anything because they feel like it was an accident. And none of them should be to blame for his choices. But then again, that kind of tips into victim blaming, and that makes me feel icky.
Yeah, and I also think about, his father heard, now Erik was bombed, it sounds like, and whatever. He went to a party, he drank all night, he was drunk. Sounds like he was trying to get in the door. And let's just take the theory that, this Spalding kid was like, yo, I'm I'm going to get this kid. We're all in on it. He tried to hook up with my girl. So, who's to say that they didn't grab him, bum rush him, grab him, the whole lot of them, tie him up and take him for a horrible joyride that ended up in his death.
Yeah. I mean, there's actually quite a few disgusting scenarios.
Yeah.
It's a shame. I feel like I kind of agree with you. Somebody should have said something. None of them have a conscience. That's what it boils down to. No conscience there.
No. So hopefully when their time finally does end, hopefully for those who were involved, have a very painful end of their life. That's all I can hope for them. And this poor family, it just breaks my heart. He's 16 years old, for God's sakes. Awful.
Yeah. Horrible.
Yeah. So, I know. Brutal. I'm not going to give up hope. I do hope and pray that someone finally breaks their silence. Let's just get it done. So, thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us. And we will see you back on Wednesday for Round Robin. Have a great week, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.